In this lesson, we will be reviewing Autodesk Inventor's most popular 2D sketching tools. Let's start off with the Line tool. From the 2D Sketch panel, I'm going to select on the Line tool, or the shortcut is going to be the letter L. Now as I start, I'm going to select my center point origin. And as I start to position that line to the right-hand side, if you look down on the lower right-hand corner of the screen, it will show me the length of that line. So approximately I'm at 35 millimeters. So if I wanted to draw that line about 100 millimeters, I can scroll with the wheel mouse and pan on over so I can gain a little bit more real estate. Again, kind of getting me a little bit better position to draw that line right around that 100 millimeters that I was suggesting. Again, this is sketching, so I'm just going to get close. And I can position the line straight up, or in this case, perpendicular. And it's going to go up right around that 58, let's make it about 60 millimeters long. Now, in this case, if I want to draw in an arc segment, instead of going back and selecting arc, what I'm going to do is I'm going to position my cursor right over that endpoint, and you'll see the color of that circle will change. And what I'm going to do now is press and hold down the left mouse button, and depending upon how I move my cursor, I'm going to get one of 8 different arcs. And these arcs, in this case, will also be tangent to the location that I'm selecting. So I'm going to kind of go back to where I was in the very first place. And as I'm sketching, you'll notice that I'm also getting these dotted lines. Those are referred to as inferred points. So it's basically telling me in this case, if I select that point right there, it will be positioned to the left or horizontally to that last point. However, what that will not be doing is it will not apply a constraint. So I could go back and drag that later. So what you'll see right now, so right after drawing that arc segment, I'm right back to the line. I didn't have to do A for arc or L for line. It's already in the Line tool. So again, I'll position that last line segment. And again, I want to draw in an arc. So just like I did before, I'm going to position my cursor right over that endpoint and click and drag with the left mouse button. And I'm going to position it right to that bottom. You'll notice when I have the green circle, it tells me that it's applying a coincident constraint. In this case, those two endpoints will touch. So I'll just press the escape key to finish that Line tool. So let's quickly review some of the other tools that are available in the Sketch panel. So underneath Line, we have Splines. And in the next set of tools, we have our circle options for creating a center point circle, tangent circle, or an ellipse. And our ellipses here are mathematical. Meaning as I went back and clicked on that center point, I'm going to define the major axes and then the minor axes. And then I can dimension them as well. In this case, I'm just going to press the D key. And I can go back and dimension them just by selecting the ellipse. And how I'm going to position that dimension is going to show me the major or the minor dimension. So let's go ahead and erase that ellipse. And let's talk a little bit else what's happening here. So you'll notice when I selected ellipse, that tool set basically is going to become the very top one. So if you're looking for center point circle, it'll now be underneath ellipse. So I'm going to jump on down here to the rectangle tool. And by default, the 2-point rectangle is the default. So let's go ahead and create a 2-point rectangle. I'm just going to pan my screen over. So very quick, very simple way to go back and draw in a rectangle. You'll notice with the 3-point rectangle, I'm going to select a first point, a second point, and a third point to define the height of that rectangle. Now I'm going to go back here. Let's talk a little bit about the arc tool. So the 3-point arc is the default. And you'll notice that 3-point arc is going to be a little bit different than you might be used to inside of AutoCAD. So in AutoCAD, you would select the very first point, which we're also going to do here inside of Inventor. But for the next point with Inventor, you're going to select the very last point. And then the last or the third point that you're going to create or select is going to be a point that defines the location of that arc. And what that allows me to do is pick that third point that in this case will also be making that arc tangent to the top and bottom horizontal line, which makes it a very nice, easy tool and removes a couple steps of having to place constraints later. You can also do a tangent arc or a center point arc. So let's look at the next set of tools. Here's going to be fillet. So with the fillet tool, it's a little bit different than you might be used to with AutoCAD. So with the 2D fillet tool, it's going to be defined for the size. In this case, we'll take the default of 2 millimeters. I'm going to select my two lines, and you'll see if I zoom back up there, it trims those line segments for me. But it also has this option called equal, and that's pressed in right now. So I'm going to select the other two lines there. I'm going to press the escape key to finish drawing in that fillet. But now I want to change that 2 millimeter fillet, let's say to 5 millimeters. So I'm just going to double click on that value, or on the value of the 2 millimeters. Change it to 5. And you'll notice that both the top and bottom fillet change because they're equal to one another. Let's undo that very quickly. And let's apply that same fillet, but in this case I'm going to uncheck the equal. So I'm going to select my line segments, but you can see the difference here is that both of those fillets were placed with their own dimension. So if I double click on that, so let's make this one 4, and I can go back and let's say make this one 7. They're both independent of each other. Another popular tool to be used could be the polygon tool. So if I go back and select on the polygon tool, so it's just like AutoCAD. We're going to define either an inscribed polygon or a circumscribed. And how many sides do we want? I'm going to change that back to 6, which is also the default. So in this case, I'm just going to pick on a point. And as I move my cursor out, I'm defining the size of that. So I'm going to just go ahead and click on Done. And I'm simply going to place in a dimension here. Just going to hit D on the keyboard. And let's say I want a dimension from the flats. If I change that to 100, you'll notice that the polygon has changed equally. So it maintains that relationship to the number of sides. So the last tool that I want to talk about here is going to be the trim and extend tool. But before we do that, I'm just going to draw in some line segments, some that are going to intersect pieces of geometry, and some others that are going to fall a little bit short. So let's scroll on down. I'm going to start off with the trim tool. So by selecting on the trim tool, all you need to do is position your cursor over the given segment that you want to trim back out, or in this case potentially even erase. But you notice what Inventor is doing, it's taking a look at all the different line segments, and where another line would intersect that, it's going to cut itself short. So in this case, if I selected that other line segment that was left, you can actually erase a given line. So let's continue our adventure down here. I'm going to select inside that shape to trim that back out. And you can see it goes pretty quickly here, but the more line segments you have, the more trimming that it's going to be required to do. Now, while I'm in the trim tool, if I hold down the Shift key, I can go back and extend that line segment. So let's take a look at the opposite here. So again, extend. Just going to select the line segment that I want to extend out. And as you can see, I can keep on going as long as there is a line that at some point would intersect it. Now if I hold down the Shift key while in the Extend tool, I'm able to trim. So it's just the opposite of the trim tool.